And I love you, Evangeline. Ooh, yeah.
Aw, that's...
Whoa!
You can't say that.
Rude.
My bad.
You should know better.
Yeah. I slipped up. I don't even understand why that's still in your lexicon. It's 2022. Doesn't have to be a big deal. We're amongst friends.
You seem pretty dismissive about it.
Alright, I'm taking off if this is just gonna be a circle jerk.
What was that?
Right? Do you think it's because he's illistic?
Oh, yeah, they really struggle with rigid thinking.
I don't think they can flip switches in their minds like we can.
Yeah,
It's really hard for them to add and delete things from their vocabulary. They do not deal with changes in social norms very well. Really, anything that involves emotions.
that poor guy.
Not an excuse. Do you think they'll find a cure for it someday?
Really?
That's the joke you want to end on?
Oh,
No, sorry, it wasn't meant to be funny. It's just that illistics struggle with perspective taking, so I was helping them out by illustrating what it's like to be talked about like you're a disease.
I would like to personally thank all those people that are calling out autism as being a fad. I know, right? Like, it's really crazy. Who would have ever thought that being infantilized, shamed, gaslighted, discriminated against, ridiculed would become a fad? Actually, you know what? Fuck you. This is David Page. Screw them for harder.
Have you ever considered the possibility that the reason that you like to self-isolate is because you feel like you don't deserve the comfort of community? That as if the very act of being around other people when you're depressed is such a burden on them that you feel like you need to hide yourself away until you feel better?
Race for Autism. Huh. A worthy prize for the fastest contestant.
Feels like something's wrong with me, and they know it. They took one look my way and exposed it.
If you want me tight, it's alright. Let the fire ignite. I'm a party girl, and I'm just warning you. You don't get it, you just don't get it.
I just went to the dentist for the first time in almost 8 years, and here are some of the tips that were given to me as an autistic person who struggles with their dental hygiene. Number 1, if you're only gonna brush once a day, try to brush at night. Number 2, you can floss and brush at different times. You don't gotta do them together. Split up the awful sensory experiences. And number 3, if possible, get a prescription strength fluoride toothpaste. It'll help keep your teeth strong on those days that you can't brush.
There's patterns! There's patterns everywhere and you're fucking laughing?
If autism screening tests were created by autistic people, they would just hand you the test and see how long it took for you to ask clarifying questions.
Autism Speaks. I sure hope it does. Autism Speaks is a terrible organization that supported the anti-vaxxer movement for years before they cleaned up their public image and never actually acknowledged it. Only 1% of the budget actually goes towards family services for people with autism. A few years ago, they released a short film in which a mother tried to kill her autistic child, and the only reason that she didn't drive off the bridge to do it is because she had a neurotypical child. They also had an ad campaign called I Am Autism, where they said that autistic children will steal your marriage and ruin your child.
Something I wish more people knew about autism is how it can present internally.
The most common representations of autism in the media are a very external presentation, and it was also probably portrayed by a boy or man. When the founding fathers of autism diagnosis were putting it together, they really did not pay any attention to AFAB individuals. That is why we are seeing so many late diagnosed autistics right now. So let's talk about a couple of the ways that autism presents internally. When it comes to friendships, you may have always kind of been on the edge of a friend group, or always just have one really, really good close friend. When it comes to anxiety, situational mutism, may struggle with self-harm and or an eating disorder, anxiety manifesting as physical symptoms like headaches or stomach aches, and may be prone to extended absences from school or work. There is so much more, so let me know if you guys want a part 2. Internal presentations of autism part 2. Let's talk about school experiences. Maybe uncomfortable raising your hand in class, or be really uncomfortable if you get called on to speak. Experience less anxiety in a class where you can choose your seat by a friend, or if the seating doesn't change. So finding classes like PE stressful because it's unpredictable. Having trouble eating in the lunchroom because of sensory issues, the smells, the noises. Being really afraid of being in trouble. Difficulty transitioning between classes or between subjects. Either masking really heavily at school and then exploding at home, or just being explosive at school and then masking at home. Struggling to meet the dress code because of sensory issues when it comes to clothing. Using compensation techniques and distractions to deter away from the fact that you are struggling or having difficulty. And I will talk about the last 3 sections in part 3. Internal presentations of autism, the third and final part. Sensory issues may have strong reactions to clothes, light, smell, noises, touch. May avoid certain aspects of grooming due to these sensory issues. Having poor interoception, so not realizing that the physical symptoms are linked to emotions. Doing things to self-soothe like tapping or pacing or listening to music with headphones. So emotionally may experience extremely intense empathy, especially towards animals and even objects. Likes to play pretend, may even pretend to be an animal. So having these really big, intense emotions, but not being able to identify or express them. More likely to be bullied or identify as some type of outsider. Repeats a lot of phrases or speaks in TV shows. Very loyal and works really hard to really truly understand people, but peopling too much is exhausting. And having intense interests.
You do exhibit quite a few signs that would suggest you're on the autism spectrum. I knew it. So some of the things we tested for are how you respond to social cues, body language, things like that. So I bet I did pretty good. No, you did terribly. What? You said I'm autistic. Yes, you were very confident. I'm confused. Very common misconception. Do you remember when I told you about an argument my partner and I were having that morning? No, not really. Yeah, you changed the subject pretty quick, which suggests that it was a little too personal for you. Where someone that's autistic would have likely reciprocated with a similar anecdote. I barely knew you. At one point I told you my mother was in the hospital, and you gave me a hug. And I said everything happens for a reason. I remember that one. Yeah, empty superlatives. What? An autistic person would have likely responded with a similar anecdote about grief, and almost certainly would not have initiated physical contact without asking. But you needed a hug. No, not for me, but don't feel bad about it. It's common for aulistics to struggle with emotional support. You give hugs to people that are sad. This, though, you actually did initiate a number of conversations on your own. Yeah? Somehow pulling subjects out of thin air. You actually tested in the top 96% of conversation starters for people your age. That's awesome. Not a super useful skill for employment. I'd suggest looking at sales, party planning, maybe those little table topic cards. You're going to need the help of others to keep your attention. Otherwise, you're going to struggle to stay on task. Okay. As I mentioned, though, very confident with nonverbal cues. That's right. But you only seem to interpret them correctly around 50% of the time. You're quick to brush off moments where it probably would have been more appropriate to ask for clarification. It's so cumbersome. Yeah, aulistics are known for preferring smoothness over clarity. But I did want to mention some of the takeaways from the scenarios you and I talked about. Like what? So Allistics have a much higher sensitivity towards authority figures. What does that mean? So when you were asked how much you'd be willing to donate to charity if asked by a cashier, you were significantly more generous than if you received a charity mailer. But they're watching you. Sure, and our autistic participants tend to answer the opposite. Charity mailer would give them time to do research to figure out how well the charity is actually utilizing the funds. Didn't even know you could do that. Don't beat yourself up. There are plenty of people that lead successful lives with autism. Do I need to take medicine, or what do I do? This is going to be really difficult for your autistic partner, so I've given you a list of online support groups for them to look into. Okay, but what do I do? Sure, we have a number of resources available to your autistic partner to help learn how to handle you. Me? What about me? Another common Allistic trait, being focused on yourself. I was saying you need to be very patient with your autistic partner because it's going to be pretty stressful for them to learn how to handle you. I'd like to give back somehow, maybe spread awareness or help advance the understanding of autism. Do you know any studies or anything that I can get involved in? Heavens no. You're in no place to figure out what's going on up there, and we have plenty of autistics looking into autism.